Well, look at you smiling. Hey, everyone. So, Carl Shepherd, he will be giving us his testimony today. He's got a very interesting story. So, Carl, where are you from?
Well, I live in the Ballardville community, which is between Morville and Dorsey, out towards Etowah County. Originally grew up and born, raised in Missouri, Hannibal, Missouri. So I went from the king of authors, Mark Twain, to the birthplace of the king of rock and roll.
You gotta love the king of rock and roll.
That's right.
If you don't know who he's talking about, we're talking about Elvis.
That's right.
So, tell me, was you raised in church?
We got in church. I was in the third grade, and my parents was invited to go to a Pentecostal church back in Missouri, and we went there for about 5 years before my parents had gotten divorced and we moved. When we moved, my mom took us out of church, and at that time, it kind of hit me hard because church was everything. I remember you doing a previous interview, I think with Mark, and you had said something about you were raised in church, and you were kind of judged and everything. And in that time frame, in that era, church was supposed to be the center of your life. And so, church is what I knew. All my friends were in church. I didn't have any friends outside church. And so we were going from a small town in Missouri of 18,000 people, and we were moving to Dallas, Texas with over 1 million. So not only was it a culture shock, but then that safety net, that security of having church was also taken out from underneath me. And so I kind of got out of church at that point. I was 15 at the time, and that was a very pivotal age in a teenager's life, and the world got their claws in me. And I tried to get back in church when I was 18, and it didn't work out. And about, 13, 15 years ago, I got back in church. But the church experience that I knew was from being a child, and that experience was, do these things because this is what we believe, and no real understanding of why we believe them. I had a bunch of scriptures I can give you, but I couldn't tell you why other than those scriptures.
Yeah.
So that was the experience I had growing up, and then getting back into church. I had a lot of questions, but
don't we all?
Yeah. Yes, absolutely.
I got questions every day.
Absolutely. Learn something new every day with the Bible.
But I look up sometimes, I said, Lord, how do you deal with all your children?
Yeah, I'm sure there's sometimes that he looks at me and shakes his head.
He looks at me all the time and shakes his head.
Yeah.
Like, what are you doing, girl?
But when I got back in church, I wanted to know why I was doing the things that I was doing. Not just be doing them because, I was told that these are the scriptures and this is why. But I wanted to know what those scriptures meant to the people they were written to in that culture, in that time frame. Because, we read the Bible with American eyes and we try to make it fit into our world. But we have to understand why Jesus said what he said to those people in that time frame and in that culture, and then take that and apply it to our lives today.
Yeah.
And so the more I studied the Word of God, the more I fell in love with God, because he's a loving father and he wants the best for his children, just like we want the best for our children. How much more does he want for us? So that was kind of my experience, and I still learn more and more about the Bible each and every day.
Yeah.
And like you said, still have questions after questions.
Well, even me growing up Pentecostal, half time I went listening because I was a kid.
Right.
And then I get out of church for years, and that's like, do I know anything?
Right. Yeah.
And you're having to relearn everything.
Yeah, absolutely. And I was a Bible quizzer when I was younger. I was ranked in the state of Missouri back in the late 80s, and knew the Word of God, knew the scriptures, quoted the verses, but didn't know what they meant. I could quote you every verse, but I couldn't tell you what it meant and why it was written. And so I think it's important that, when the Bible says study to show yourself approved, that you really dig into the Word and say, what does this mean and how can I apply it to my life today?
Right.
So that's kind of been my, yes, if I was raised in church, that's kind of a 30,000 foot view of, my church experience. And, um, and I still, like I said, try to strive to please God every day, be the man that He's called me to be, and be pleasing in His eyes.
So you told me something interesting about your mother.
Yeah,
Will you share that?
absolutely. So I say BC a lot, jokingly, because it's before Carl. Um,
That's a good one.
yeah. So before I was born, my mom, she was involved in witchcraft. It was in her mother's side of the family, and when we got into church, she got delivered from that. And that was something that was significant in her life. I was still kind of young and not really understanding all of what that meant, um, and how much it had an effect on her life prior to um, being involved in church and getting delivered from it, and then after getting delivered from it. Um, the sad part about it is when we got back out of church, she got back involved in that.
Mm.
And I realized what it did, not only to her life, but how it affected us too, not only, at that time, but even when we were younger. We grew up watching Stephen King movies. We grew up, the Freddy Krueger, all that kind of
Yeah.
stuff, and not realizing the significance that kind of stuff has in our lives, and then, how it affected me as a child. Um, and so, when you entertain that kind of spirit, you can't entertain it without it taking control of you in some form or fashion. And unfortunately, she got to the point where she basically lost her mind. We had to have her committed into a mental institution. She was bipolar, schizophrenia, just the whole 9 yards. Thought everybody was out to get her.
Mm-hmm.
And, it was sad to watch her going from a woman who worshiped and praised God and danced in the spirit and spoke in tongues and witnessed and, you know, showed the fruit of the spirit, going to the person that she became.
Yeah.
And then, last year she um, lost her life. She was in a mental institution and had getting a little bit poor in health and fell out of the bed and hit her head. She had a brain bleed and just did not heal from it. And so she ended up losing her life. And, um, you know, I look at that and, it saddens me to think of, you know, who she could have been
Yeah.
and what she could have done for the Lord and the
Mm-hmm.
souls that she could have won. Because it is, once you get involved in those spirits, I mean, there's a way out. There's always a way out.
Yes.
But you have to be willing um, to overcome that, and it's not something that's easily done. You have
You
to
gotta
fight that.
rebuke them.
Yes, absolutely,
You gotta rebuke them.
absolutely. So, yeah, that's also, I'm not a fan of Halloween. I'm not against anybody that is a fan of Halloween. That's, that's their
Mm-hmm.
business. But for me, in my personal life, I know how that spirit has affected my family.
Right.
And I don't want to reintroduce that into my family currently. Again, if I'm not saying it's wrong for you or anybody else to celebrate it, that's y'all's business. But I
Mm-hmm.
know what it's done for me and my family, and I try to stay away from it.
Well, for me, before I got in church, I loved it. I loved Halloween. I loved witchy stuff. I wanted to be a witch, not like a real witch, but pretend.
Yeah, right.
Like, I love the scary stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And I even like the ghosts and spirits and, all of those scary things.
Right.
And then once I got in church, I was done with, all that had to go. Anything that I had that was witchy, even things that I bought at yard sales and antique stores, I threw it all away.
Right.
I did. Everything that I owned that I knew was not of God,
Right.
was gone.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
And that's you make a good point, that wasn't of God.
Mm-hmm.
And either you're for it or you're against them. Either you're playing on his team or you're not playing on his team, but you got to be committed one way or another.
You can't serve both.
No.
Mm-mm.
And for me, it's for me, that's a black and white. That's
Yeah.
there's no in between when it comes to that type of stuff. And again, that's based on my experience. Sorry, I didn't mean to hit my, but it's based on my experience personally.
Hmm.
Everybody has different, experiences. I know, there's a man that I, love and respect, and he doesn't play pool. There's nothing wrong with playing pool, but he was delivered from the pool hall, you know.
Yeah.
And so, I respect him for his belief
Because he
in
made
that.
it an obsession.
Yeah, it made it an obsession, and it connected him to his former life when he drank and smoked and,
Yeah.
lived in sin. And so for him, that's a standard that he set in his life. And so similarly, yeah, that word. That's what I've done with Halloween. That's a standard that I've set in my life for
Hmm.
me.
Hmm.
Um, you know, so it was a experience that I would not wish upon anyone
Right.
to have to go through or live through. But it also opened my eyes to the power. Just like God has power and He has the ultimate power, the devil still does. He's a prince of the air. Um, and so he does have his, limited power, and he can control and possess.
Hmm.
And so that's one of those things where, I draw the line for me. Uh, Again, I don't push that on anybody else. That's just something that I draw the line for me on.
Right. Now, you had a little accident
I
a
did.
few years ago,
I did.
and you have one leg.
I do.
You want to share that with us?
Absolutely. I say I don't go swimming anymore because I'll swim in a circle. But no, seriously. Back in 2010, I was loading firewood up in the back of my pickup truck in Guntown. I'd cut a tree down and burnt wood in the house for heating, and was loading firewood up and walked into the hitch on a pickup truck. Yes, it hurt, but it was nothing significant. It
Hmm.
just broke the
Something
skin.
you don't think of.
No, you don't think of it. And, it's like any other guy. I was like, oh, it'll be all right, no big deal. Well, it progressively got worse, and it progressively got worse, and it was like, okay, maybe I need to put some neosporin on this. Maybe I need to go see the doctor. Maybe I need to. And so by the time I did go see the doctor, it was too far gone. It was like, you need to go see a wound specialist. It had gotten that bad. So, I went to a wound specialist here in Tupelo. They started working on it, and it would get better and then get worse, get better and get worse. And this was a ongoing thing. So I would find a different wound specialist, and I would find a different doctor, and been all over North Mississippi. And for about 6 years, 5 or 6 years, I went to every doctor. Finally, I found one that was both a wound specialist and a vascular surgeon. And I have a blood clotting disorder. Actually, I have two of them, Leiden factor 5 and factor 8, which basically what that does is your blood clots when it shouldn't. It clots internally. Our blood is made when you get a cut on your hand or whatever, your blood will dry and clot, so you don't bleed out. Well, mine would do that inside. It would produce clots on the inside. And so what was happening was is I wasn't getting good circulation. And so he found, okay, this is why it's not healing. Let's try to fix that problem. At that time, that was about 2 years. We fought with that, trying to fix that, but the veins were so far gone. And I have to tell you, I went to the altar. I can't tell you how many times to get prayed for. I was put on
Hmm.
prayer lists, left and right. I worked at Cooper Tire, and I had a guy that was one of the maintenance men, and he came up to me one day and he said, "Hey, I know you go to church," and he said, "I want to ask you otherwise, but do you mind if I put you on our church's prayer list?" And I said, "No, not at all." And
And you was in church.
I was in church. I
Hmm.
was going to church, and so I was like, "Sure, absolutely." And about a week later, in the mail, I get this thick envelope addressed to me from a Baptist church. I can't remember exactly where it was located, but people had written on little scrap pieces of paper, "Hey, I'm praying for your leg," or verses of encouragement. And that meant the world to me.
Hmm.
And so at the time I was single, and you know, my leg was wrapped from my toes all the way to my knee. I couldn't, I had to have a cast protector to take a shower. That wrap was on 24 hours a day. It would get changed a couple times a week, depending on how much the drainage was and everything. But, I was, at that time, I was like, I'm different than everybody else. I can't be, doing everything that everybody else was doing. I was a runner. I loved to run. There was a gentleman in the church got me into running, and I was running all the way until I couldn't any longer. But it affected my life completely. Well, I got married, started dating a girl, Brandy, and we got married in 2017. And, when we started dating, I told her, I said, there's a good possibility that, with what's going on with me, I could lose my leg at some point.
Uh-huh.
And I said, that's going to be a lot to take on. And, she's been there with me every step of the way. We got married 2017, June of 2017. And in October of 2018, our second to youngest daughter was born. And I had gotten to the point where I was in pain 24/7. I mean, my leg had gotten so bad that I was in pain. And so I asked my doctor, I said, is it time to go ahead and have the surgery? And, he agreed that it was. And so my wife and I had a conversation. He set us an appointment up with a surgeon. We went and did that consultation. Um, Walking in there with a, newborn baby, just a couple weeks old. Her, my brother-in-law, her brother, and myself, and we went in there and we were talking, and the surgeon took a look at my leg and he says, absolutely, you're past time. And so he set me up an appointment to go see a prosthesis guy, doctor, and, to see what life would be like without a limb. And when he came back in, we told him, we said, yeah, I think we'll go ahead and have the surgery. It's a big decision. I had a good job, but I was providing for a family, a new family. We'd just been married a year. She had 2 young sons. I had 2 young daughters, and so we had 4 kids, and the 2 daughters were on their own. One was living with her mom. One was already moved out. The 2 sons were still with us. But as a man, it's my responsibility to take care of my family. And so it was a huge decision for me.
I know it was hard.
It was.
Hard.
And it was also one that I questioned because, God, you require the man to take care of his family and support his family. And, how am I going to do this? Questions that went through my mind is, what happens if something happens to my daughter and I have to chase after her? What if she runs in the street?
Yeah.
How am I going to do that with one leg? So we tell the doctor, yeah, we're ready. And he said, great, I can get you in surgery tomorrow morning. I was like, whoa, doc, we're going to need a couple days to process this. So November 14th of 2018, I had the surgery. And, I went in there thinking, because I was full of energy and, I was this guy that did stuff all the time. And went in there thinking, okay, I'm going to have this surgery and a couple of weeks are going to go by. I'm going to get fit for a prosthesis and then I'm going to be back to normal. And that's not the way it worked out. In all reality, I had to go back. That was November of 2018. I had to go back in February of 2018 to have some more bone cut off because I had gotten an infection. And, I would ask God, why? What good is going to come out of this? How can I be an effective minister for you when I've just got one leg? I'm, half the man I used to be.
So you like to make jokes, don't you?
Yeah,
about it?
I love it. I don't know if you've seen my tag as you came in, but it says leg room.
Leg room. That's what his tag says, leg room.
Yes. So, but I had serious questions of, how can I be effective? And I was working for Cooper Tire, and I tell you, they were absolutely wonderful to me. They would, they had me working in a dye shop where, we were set down most of the time, but I couldn't walk through the plant on crutches because of the oil and the water and all that kind of stuff on the floor. So they would bring somebody out to the parking lot in a golf cart and pick me up and bring me to the dye shop. One day I was walking to the bathroom or hopping to the bathroom, and a guy on a forklift was driving by, and he stopped. And he just looked at me and he says, how do you do it? I said, what are you talking about? He says, every time I see you, you've got a smile on your face. You come to work every day. He said, why? What makes you do that? And that's when it was an aha moment for me. It was like, I'm still being a witness for God because, I was able to tell him it's not by my strength. It's not because of what I can do. It's because
Mm-hmm.
of the strength that God provided me. His word says is, in our weakness, his strength is made strong.
Right.
And so, it's through that. And that was the aha moment for me, was that I'm still being a witness for him. I'm still bearing that fruit that he wants us to bear.
Mm-hmm.
And so things started to turn around for me, spiritually at that point, that, hey, I can do this. But you never go through life without ups and downs, ups and downs. And Brandy's going to watch this, and I had never shared this with her. I've shared it with Life Recovery. But I was at home one day, and I was on my crutches. I was walking by our front door. The front door was open, and we had a storm door. And it was the first time that I saw my reflection, my full reflection. And there I was on crutches. The first time I saw myself as as an amputee with no leg. And I tell you, when I did, the devil started in on me. How are you going to provide? How are you going to
Mm-hmm.
do this? How are you going to be a protector? You're supposed to be a protector. How can you protect your family? You've got one kid, you got one on the way. How are you going, or one baby and one on the way, and you got two grown sons at home? And, how are you going to be the protector of your family? How are you going to do this? How are you going to do that?
Well, and people don't understand that that's what the devil will do. He's going to
Yes.
knock you when you're already down.
Right.
He's going to he's going to put it up here that
Exactly.
you are nothing anymore. You're worthless.
Right.
And you can't listen to him.
No,
And
you can't.
we do sometimes. I mean,
Yeah,
we will listen to it and it will get us down.
it will.
And then we have to snap out and be like, that's the devil.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't snap out though. For me, it was easy to fake feeling bad.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I didn't do it a lot, but there were times when I was feeling bad and down and depressed, and it was like, oh, I don't feel good this morning. Well, one morning my wife gets up, and I just tell her, I'm like, I'm not feeling good. I'm going to stay home. And so I said, y'all go ahead and go into the church. I'll be all right. And so they went on to church, and I stayed in bed, and the devil just kept in my ear. And he started in on this suicide. Why don't you just end it?
Mm-hmm.
Why don't you just get it all over with? And I was thinking of ways I could do it. I knew I had a gun in the other room. I had one in my truck, and all I had to do was pull the trigger and it'd be over. Then I got to
Mm-hmm.
thinking, well, I can't do it in here because I don't want them to walk in and find a bloody mess.
Mm-hmm.
I said, but I could go out there to the shed and do it. Well, then somebody will hear me. And I mean, just one thought after another, that was just going through my mind, going through my mind. And um, finally, I was just like, God, you're going to have to help me. And about that time, my wife came in from church and checked in on me and asked me how I was feeling. And I just, I'm doing all right.
You didn't tell her nothing.
Didn't tell her a word. To this day, I haven't told her about it personally. Like I said, I
Okay.
shared it with Life Recovery. She's going to find out now, right? But um, I said, I'm doing fine. And it wasn't long after that, 15, 20 minutes, Brother Robbins calls. It's like, I missed you at church this morning.
It's funny how he always shows up, ain't it? Just
It
out of the
is.
blue.
It is, Brother Robbins. um, he does. And he called and he's like, hey, I know you're probably feeling bad, but I think there's more going on. I just want to pray for you. And so, he prayed for me there on the phone. And then another friend of mine, Clint Hood,
Mm-hmm.
he called me that afternoon, just checking in on me and seeing how I was doing. But it was that encouragement, and that's what's so important about being involved in a community of followers of Jesus, because they help lift you up. And it's the times that you don't think God is listening, or the times that you feel like your prayers are hitting the ceiling. That song says He's still working, even when
Mm-hmm.
I don't see it, even when I don't hear Him. And that was the day that He was working for me, because it would have been so easy that day. The devil was just pounding me.
Oh, yeah.
And, I could have found every reason to do that, but God has a purpose. And, no matter what the situation is. For me, yeah, I have one leg, but no matter what you're going through, whatever situation that you find yourself in, he still has a purpose. There's still a calling on your life. Um, I look at the young man Nick. I can never pronounce his last name, but he's got no feet, no arms, and he's an ambassador for Christ in the way that he knows best to. Been overseas and shared the gospel the best way he knows how, and there's still a purpose no matter what our situation is. And that's the thing. I find things to be thankful for. I find gratitude, and if you have gratitude in your life, that's going to overpower all the doubt, all the fears. Perfect love casts out all fear. And so if you can find that gratitude, that's showing love to God. Thank you for the sunset tonight. Thank you for the sunrise. You know, um, I love the moon. And I was saying something about that to our life recovery class here a couple, 3 months back. And I said, there's nothing like seeing a full moon out and it's just coming up in the horizon. And it's just huge and it's that orange color. Um, not knowing what phase of the moon was. And I leave that night and I'm headed home. And right there, going up Interstate 22 towards, Louisville, there the moon is, just huge ball of orange. And it's like, you think of the small things, you know, we like that, and you think since we like it, you're just gonna hang it in the air for us. And so it's the small thing. When you think about the gratitude, it makes you forget all the other negatives in your life.
Like the other night when the was in revival, and that pastor, he said, talking about the horse.
Yeah.
Like it was a horse.
Yeah.
But it was important to her.
Yep.
And that really got me.
Yes.
That was a good sermon.
It was.
It really stuck to me, that because it's important to her, it's important to God.
Exactly. And that's what we have to, that's where you find that gratitude. That's where you can find reasons to be thankful for. And when you find that, that negative soon disappears. And when people say, well, my pain's not near as great as yours, but no, your pain is your pain. You're experiencing something painful in your life. There's no reason to compare it to somebody else's. There's always going to be somebody worse off than you, always. So it's one of those situations that that's one thing that I don't want to say it bothers me, but I don't want people downplaying that, because their pain is significant to them and what they're going through. But God still cares, no matter how small they may think it is. God still cares.
Oh yeah.
And He's still looking out, even though we may not know or understand what's going on. Something somewhere along the way comes. Somebody says, "How do you do it? How do you have that smile?" And then that light bulb clicks, and you're like, "This is my calling, to encourage people, to be that light in that dark world." And so that's why I keep going. That's how I keep going, is knowing that through this, while I may not understand, through it, God's still working, and His plan is being revealed as it goes.
Oh yeah.
So if I could be a witness, through this, then I'm going to. And again, I love having fun with it. I tell kids will come up and ask me what's going on, and I tell them that I didn't eat my vegetables, or crocodile got me, or something, something funny, because it's a pretty boring story. Walking into a hitch on a pickup truck.
Well, you might as well just have fun with it, because it's there and it's not going nowhere. So.
Right. Our friend posted on Facebook looking for a plumber that wouldn't cost her an arm and a leg.
Oh yeah, I seen her post, and I seen what you wrote.
Yeah, it's like, well, I can help negotiate.
Don't forget, we all friends with the same people.
Yep. It's like I can help negotiate. It only costs me a leg. But it's having fun with it, because you've got to find the humor, and then realize that you're still being a witness.
Well, Carl, I want to thank you for doing this interview.
Absolutely.
And you want to say anything personal to them, or?
Well, I just want to open myself up. Just if somebody needs somebody to talk to, I am more than willing and able to, reach out, talk, meet a Bible study. If anything I can do to encourage you, I'm available. Christy knows how to get in touch with me. I'm on social media, so please feel free to reach out.
Mm-hmm.
I appreciate you giving me this opportunity to share the
Well, I
testimony.
appreciate you doing it.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Well, we'll see y'all later.
See ya.